The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is one of the most ambitious projects in the modern history of Africa, and it marks a turning point for Ethiopia as a nation.
The benefits it'll have on Ethiopia are unbelievably vast. But what does it mean for Sudan?
Originally called Project X, then the Millennium Dam, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam was announced on the 31st of March 2011 and has been in construction ever since. Boasting a storage capacity of around 74 billion cubic meters and a hydropower potential of around 15,000 gigawatt hour per year, it stands to be one of the largest hydroelectric plants in the world, and certainly the largest in Africa. It'll help support their ever-growing population and rather severe nationwide electricity problems, and help mitigate many of their long-standing economic issues. This video, however, is about what all this means for us, and it means quite a lot, both positive and negative. The positives can be drawn back to one main fact. The dam will regulate water flow in the Blue Nile. You see, in the rainy season, especially around August, the flow of the Blue Nile increases dramatically. During this time, and due to the rather low capacity of Sudanese dams, we are forced to release the water, so reduced power generation, and a high risk of some severe downstream flooding. Upon the filling and operation of the dam, most of the water will be regulated. For starters, this means that our total annual hydropower generation will see a substantial increase, which could help alleviate the electricity problems that we're going through at the moment. Another benefit of the regulated water flow is the enabling of Sudan to better manage its irrigation channels in a way that wouldn't be possible during flooding. Since we'll have more water to be stored throughout the year, which can be used to supply current irrigation channels and even expand it as a whole, creating a more fluid and flexible irrigation scheme as opposed to the current strict pattern. This will undoubtedly hurt floodplains, and we'll go over that in a minute. But overall, irrigation will be more easily controlled. The flow regulation will also help reduce flood risk, which is a huge deal, since the reduction of flooding will help save the homes of millions of people living downstream, and will again give more water to be effectively stored and utilized throughout the year. Aside from that, it also stands to achieve the reduction of sediment, which has always plagued Sudanese dams by reducing their effective capacity. While it has, however, provided a source for natural fertilizers, the damage it caused throughout the years has cost an immense amount of time and money to help fix. Since the majority of sediment will be suspended upstream, most of it won't reach our reservoirs. The dam will also increase the navigation depth along the Blue Nile River, which means that all manner of boats and ships will be able to travel through the Blue Nile at any time during the year. Regional cooperation is also one of the greatest benefits that we can hope to achieve. Basically speaking, Sudan can import electricity from Ethiopia at a favored price, and in turn, since our lands are so rich with farmlands, Sudan can help them with agriculture, leading to mutual benefit for years to come. Those are the main advantages, but now let's talk about all the potential drawbacks. The dam will completely change the flow regime of the Blue Nile, and that does have some potential risks to everything downstream if it's not properly managed. These risks include the lives and livelihoods of millions of Sudanese people living downstream, as well as many potential environmental risks. Let's start with one of the most controversial topics surrounding the impacts of the dam, which is the reduction of floodplains. The Renaissance Dam will cause a substantial loss to floodplains, generally said to be around 50%. There are two sides to this one, however. On one hand, you have the fact that the plains will be able to be planted 3 times a year, or 3 rotations of crops, instead of just once a year during flood. On the other hand, you have to consider the average farmer who works along the riverbank and plants his crops for free using the flood waters to irrigate. Such a man will now have to use pumps for irrigation, and although the variety of crops will potentially cover the cost of the pump and fuel, it still represents a fundamental change to the work and living routine of such people, a change that many of them might not be able to afford. Now, the environmental impacts can be very substantial, as there are many aspects of the downstream environment that can be affected negatively by the construction of the Renaissance Dam. This comes down to the fact that the fundamental concept of a dam will inevitably affect the environment. since we are, after all, putting a very large wall in the middle of a natural body of water. So let me elaborate. The environmental impacts will be felt most in the Roseres and Sennar downstream area, since they are the closest to the GERD. For starters, fisheries will be affected, since affecting the flow of a river inevitably affects the fish living in that river, and in turn the fishermen thriving off of these fish. There's also a risk to water quality. See, if the reservoir created by the dam is not properly managed, the water quality can deteriorate and lead to more damage to fish and even cause further sediment. The construction of the Renaissance Dam also has risks that manifest in the lives and routines of villages who depend on the river on a day-to-day basis and are at risk of, at worst, a fundamental change to their lifestyle. It also has the potential to risk forestry, as some forests who depend on flooding to thrive will now have to depend solely on the rain for natural water. Although this one is more long-term and can perhaps be avoided through manpower. The dam can also pose a risk to groundwater supply, although studies have shown that this is very minimal. There's the possibility that the dam will hurt brick manufacturing, which depends on flooding and sediment. Although there's the argument that brick kilns can be found, manufactured, and utilized locally away from the river. But again, this may affect workers near the river. Let's have a quick recap of what we just talked about. The benefits of the dam can be summed up as follows. The regulation of water flow will have substantial positive impacts to electricity and overall water storage, which will help Sudan with irrigation. It will achieve the reduction of sediment, increase navigation depth along the Blue Nile, and lead to overall regional cooperation for years to come. The drawbacks can be felt in the reduction of floodplains and the environmental risks, which can reach fisheries and forestry. The social impacts affecting the people living downstream, the minimal risk to groundwater, and the debatable but still worth noting risk to brick manufacturing. It should be noted that the potential risks can be mitigated greatly if the operation of the dam is cooperative, especially with the Roseres Dam, which lies only 100 kilometers away. If not, then they have the potential to turn into catastrophes. Therefore, it should be stressed that an agreement of operation must be implemented between the Roseres Dam and the Renaissance Dam in order to maximize the benefits and try our best to mitigate the drawbacks. Regardless, this stands to be a milestone in the development of Africa as a continent, and we can be hopeful for a brighter future filled with cooperation throughout the regional Nile countries. I personally think that the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. But now that you have most of the facts, why don't you tell me what you think in the comment section down below, and continue the conversation amongst each other. But for now, I've been Ahmed Mustafa, and thank you for watching.